Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a lovely Thursday evening. You're safe and that you're healthy. And if your economy's opened up, I hope you're staying inside and being wise. I am here to talk to you today about Biden and Bernie and their committee I don't know, their latest committee. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. But first, if you are not subscribing to our YouTube, please click subscribe, the alert, like, share. And of course, if you like learning about how the establishment functions, how they're organized, the power games they play to push us down as a movement, to push down working people, if you like to follow the money, then this is where you go. Go to patreon.com/The Nomi Show. I'm using this new mug that we got. We actually got them for live events, and that's a thing that doesn't exist anymore for the time being. Although we might come up with something virtual. If you guys are into that, let me know, because we might put together a virtual live event that is invite only and off the record and funny with a bunch of different hosts that you probably love. But yeah, we have these really cool mugs, and we have... Oh, let me get it. It's under the desk. It is a bag. Look at that bag. Yeah. You can go to all the places and use this bag. Or you can do what I do and just go from room to room and put things in the bag and carry them into other rooms. Or walk down the street, social distancing as I do. I mean, where do we go? Honey LeBronk's sister. I love this. I'm just starting to get into Superchat. Honey, what do you want to know? Thank you for the Superchat love. Honey's amazing. If you don't follow Honey LeBronk's, please do. I follow her on Instagram. She's just ruthlessly progressive. That's what we need, by the way. When I look for a leader now, like people ask me to do endorsements, blah, 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 or come on the show, I'm like, are you ruthlessly progressive? Are you going to fight for not just the person next to you, but you're going to fight against the establishment when it's really hard? Are you going to push back against Pelosi when she's got all the power in the caucus to really hold against you? Are you going to do what Pramila Jayapal did? And kudos to Pramila Jayapal. Send her your love, because she has a caucus that is not unified, the Progressive Caucus. You know, some of those folks still take corporate money, but Pramila Jayapal, she's an immigrant. She came up as a union activist and organizer. She has a different personal story than Nancy Pelosi. And there could not have been a clearer time than this week. And kudos to Pramila Jayapal. And I urge you to urge your Democratic representatives to vote no. We need a better bill, especially if it's not bound to pass in the Senate. The least that Democrats can do right now is have a backbone. But God forbid they throw a bone to progressives, which is what we're here to talk about. So you guys may have seen that Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders decided to do a unity group. Okay, I know a lot of people push back on these committees and they say, oh, Nomi, you were on the Unity Reform Commission. That was a farce. That was a joke. Nothing actually happened there. I hear you. I really do hear you. And there were times where I felt that way. We knew going in that we were entering the king's court and we were just his pawns. But it doesn't mean that some of the pawns can't be a little bit more feisty than other pawns and have nothing to lose but to fight back against the system. So, you know, I was on the platform committee in 2016, and then I was on the Unity Reform Commission. The platform committee was a real serious fight. It was actually kind of amazing in that you had these incredible activists like Cornel West and union organizers and, you know, Nina Turner and Ben Jealous and Josh Fox and Bill McKibben and Tara Houska and Jane Klebb. I mean, these were all the folks that were on the platform committee. And we fought for the $15 minimum wage. We fought for getting fracking out of the party and out of the platform. We fought for criminal justice reform. We fought for legalizing marijuana. And these were issues that, if I know it's hard to remember this, but just 4 years ago, they would not be brought to the table in the Democratic Party. So symbolically, it was a big deal that we passed a lot of these reforms. Campaign finance reform. Symbolically, huge deal. But the day after the platform committee finalized a very long process in which it started off with the platform drafting committee, which included Keith Ellison and Dr. Zogby and Neera Tanden. Go back and watch those videos. They're real fun. So that was, that was a fight. And then it went to the platform voting committee, which was a group of delegates from the Hillary side and the Bernie side. And it was a hard-fought fight. I don't think the Democratic Party had ever seen anything like that. And then we brought in, we attracted, I should say, a couple hundred activists who were there in the crowd fighting with us and cheering with us. And, when we get up and speak, we weren't giving like a congressional speech. We were giving rally speeches. People were standing up. They had posters inside and outside. It was so powerful. If you have a chance to go back and look at the platform committee hearings from 2016, please do. But then what happened after all that energy, after we pissed off a lot of very powerful people who had never had light shined on them ever, like Neera Tanden, after all of that, Hillary Clinton said, oh yeah, sure, the Democratic Party took fracking out of their platform, banned it. Oh, that's cute. I'm going to go have a fundraiser with a Colorado fracking CEO, I think the largest at that time. So there is nothing about the platform that is held to members of the Democratic Party. It is actually symbolic. Now, it could be important when trying to win a policy fight, but it is not something that is going to, unless every single person who gets the nomination of the Democratic Party from local to national has to live by that and abide by that platform, unless that's the case, it means very little. It's supposed to be this moral document. It's supposed to be the Bible of the Democratic Party. And it's not. It definitely hasn't been in the past. It was public and it was an emotional thing. And it was good that Bernie fought for those things and used that in the media in the months afterwards. Like, we passed the most progressive platform in history. And that's great. Good. But then we got to figure out how to hold that to all the Democrats. If the Democratic Party is not going to make it so that you don't get the endorsement of the Democratic Party unless you value this platform, it's not meaningful. Unions do that. So how are we doing on, I'm getting an alert here saying that there's something with the keyframes. Is everybody okay over here? Hyde, what's up? Nomi, just want to read you Harry Potter and brush your hair. Is my hair messy? I had it in a ponytail earlier and I took it out. I was taping earlier today, some interviews. It was really great. Next week, if you're not a patron already, on Saturday, we're going to be posting interviews with Reed Lindsay, who's a reporter in Cuba, and he's been working there for the last 2 years, and he's been documenting how Cuba is responding to COVID and how they're helping other countries around the world. It's a fascinating interview. And then we talked to Shahid Buttar, who, of course, is an activist, a lawyer. He is a friend, and he's challenging Nancy Pelosi, and what a time to have Shahid on to talk about what's going on. So, all right. So my frustration about this committee, having been on the Unity Reform Commission, and the reason why I say there's a difference between platform, having been on that, and the Unity Reform Commission, having been on that, is that the Unity Reform Commission, while we were in the minority, every once in a while there are these commissions, and they're crucial to the rules of the Democratic Party. There was a commission in the early 80s called the Hunt Commission that came up with the idea of superdelegates. Now, that happened while that form of the establishment, the lobbyist-leaning establishment, was not in the majority. They were in the minority. So this is where the sausage gets made, and because there's very rarely any public awareness about those commissions, things slip through the cracks, and oftentimes there hasn't been real pushback in the last 30 years since the corporate Democrats took over the party, brought in lobbyist money, brought in weapons manufacturer money, brought in oil and gas money, the corporate money, of course, insurance money, pharmaceutical money. Since then, and by the way, at the same time, they pushed out the union money. I'm saying union members. So the Democratic Party used to be a different composition. And over the last 30, 40 years, the priorities have shifted with the membership of the Democratic Party. So this Unity Reform Commission was very important. We were fighting as activists, as working people, as folks who've been involved in communities and were union members and leaders. We were fighting consultants and lobbyists and like a couple of folks who are involved in party politics. There was not one union leader on the other side. So it was a real fight over the rules of the party, and there wasn't a lot of attention on it. And so when people think like, oh, it was just a front, it wasn't. Because if it was a front, it would have been something that was put out in the press a lot more. The party knew that there was something that was a deal that was made over, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders made that deal so that Bernie would give Hillary his delegates at the convention, and there wasn't going to be this split convention. And he got the Unity Reform Commission. The problem is that we have these committees and commissions, and the way that the Democratic Party, the DNC, uses its power even when they lose its power. So they didn't want the Unity Reform Commission, but they were like, oh, okay, how do we manipulate the rules and the process to make it so that less stuff is done and people don't care? Well, number one, they make the commission last 2 years. They put it in the basements of hotels where there's no Wi-Fi. They don't tell the press about it until a couple of days later, so they can't get on the plane and go to whatever city they're doing it in. And, they don't tape it. They don't put the minutes online. They say things like, oh, it's too expensive to put the Wi-Fi in or to tape the meetings when there's an open meeting rule. So they want things to operate. They want it all to operate in the shadows. And then we had these backroom meetings, which was against the rules of the DNC. And ultimately, it was very hard to keep up. Even really smart journalists, they have editors they go to, and the editors are like, we got to focus on other stuff that's in front of us. It was a long, drawn-out process, and I'm actually impressed that a lot of reporters like Dan Moran's and Dave Weigel and John Idarola from TYT, they were covering it along the way when very few people, and I apologize to any reporters that were also covering it throughout the process, not just at the end. If I'm forgetting you right now. But it wasn't easy. It was a lot of weird rules, and even DNC members didn't understand it, so we'd have to host regular meetings. So the reason why that was important is because there was a lot on the line. There was a lot of contract money on the line. There was a lot of budgetary oversight on the line. I don't think they expected to have Jim Zogby and myself talk about the budget and how all the corruption from the party stems from that. And ultimately, we raised awareness about these issues, and we got attacked, personal attacks, death threats, smears in the press, because we were highlighting the total corruption that rots the Democratic Party. The people who are voting members of the party, who are on the Rules Committee, overseeing everything, who are representing, who have conflicts of interest, who are representing the worst people on the planet. And we were highlighting that. And meanwhile, you have a bunch of honest DNC members who want to see reforms. They're not all Bernie people, but they want to see reforms. They want to see honesty in the party. They believe in unions, and they were being shut out. So that was a very different process. And, even after 2 years, it still went to a rules committee that was stacked with people that were appointed, not elected. And we tried to get them in the Unity Reform Commission. We tried to pass it so that these people had to be elected, because that's how democracy works. It's not like democracy, then less democracy and less democracy. The oversight shouldn't be appointed. They should be brought in democratically, because all the people who are doing the oversight and taking what we created in the Unity Reform Commission, the proposal, they erased things from the proposal that affected their bottom lines. There were a ton of conflicts. So ultimately, the way that the party, and this is old, this isn't something that just the DNC does, this is just like machine politics 101. They drag things out through process, backdoor, they bore people, they operate in the shadows, which is why we have to pay attention to everything happening right now. They rush through votes so that no one has time to ask questions, and sometimes they throw bones to make people feel like they're being heard, and that leads to this task force, this policy-focused task force. Now, let me be very clear from the beginning. I love a lot of people on this task force, and I don't think that they're dumb. I think they know exactly what they're going into. It doesn't mean that they aren't going to have a megaphone. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to raise awareness about issues that need to be raised. I raised awareness about the budget and the conflicts of interests, And I knew I was going to lose. I don't know. Maybe I didn't know those. There were times where I knew and didn't think that we were going to win those fights. But, this is basically a glorified platform committee, but it's not the platform committee because they meet first and then it goes to the platform committee. So this is a new process. Nobody in the DNC voted on this process. This is some sort of agreement that Bernie and Biden made together. So there's some really great people in this task force on Bernie's side, and of course there's some really horrible people on Biden's side. But I don't even care about going through that because I just think that, and to be fair, there's some people that are like really decent folks that are on the Biden side too, because he doesn't want to look like a complete asshole. But ultimately, whatever they draft is going to go to the platform committee, which is going to be made up of a bunch of appointees and Biden delegates, which is going to be the majority, and then whatever number of delegates Bernie gets from the remaining elections, primary elections that are going to happen. And then they're going to vote on something, and then no one's going to be held to it. See what I'm saying here? Of course I believe that Sarah Nelson, who I adore, is going to stand up for what is right. And she will make a case for everything that needs to be made a case for right now. I mean, working women on the front lines, the flight attendants who are still flying in the sky right now, and some of these standards. I just heard about British Airways. They're not being forced to use masks. I mean, it's just, and these packed airlines. I mean, that is exactly who should be on that task force talking about these issues. But she's operating within the confines of this structure that, is not really necessarily going to be direct change. It'll make a case for change and maybe the public attention because of a lot of these folks that are put on these committees, like AOC and Sarah Nelson and Stephanie Kelton. I mean, these are people who, when they speak, people listen, and Pramila Jayapal, of course. People will listen to them, and they should listen to them, and maybe that's enough to make a difference. But at the end of the day, I think what's really frustrating is thinking that this is actually going to become a rules change. It's not like the Biden campaign or administration is going to be held to whatever they come up with, whatever document they come up with that's going to go to another committee, that the majority of that committee are going to be Biden people. A lot of them have conflicts of interest in industries. Like if you're going to look at something like the healthcare committee, I mean, there are insurance lobbyists in the DNC. I have to look at the platform committee, but I'm going to guess that there are some that are appointed to the platform committee because that's where they put them. Same thing with folks who work with oil and gas or fracking. That's exactly how the platform committee went last time. So not only is Biden not held to this through the campaign, but I really hope he does stick to it, but he's not held to it in the administration. So my frustration, and I'm sorry, Bernie, but, campaign's over. It's time for me to actually make some points here. You have to understand how these political processes go. Thank God there are people that are put on those committees that are strong enough to push back against any fire that they may receive. And I don't know if the DNC really has it in them. I don't know if they really believe that Biden's going to win, so they're going to go full throttle. But I think that you have to understand, like, this is another opportunity for them to come after the movement. And I just feel like at the end of the day, it saved a lot of stress. Number one, Bernie should have stayed in the race a little bit longer, so maybe he had a little bit more leverage. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but that's just how I'm feeling right now. Number two, you want to change the DNC, negotiate a new chair. Make it a public issue. Say, I think, with respect to the former Secretary of Labor, I think that this is the time when we have to talk about new leadership and what the next generation of DNC leadership is going to look like. That's leverage. Bernie has so much public leverage. Maybe not delegate-wise, but he has it publicly. He could, put out a press conference, and granted he's doing all these live streams and whatever, but that's for the movement. He could, call for a press conference in front of the DNC and say, I want to see Pramila Jayapal put in charge of the DNC. I'm just naming a name, but she would be pretty freaking badass as a DNC chair. That's what leverage is. It's hard to fight that. I call for DNC elections. Or, you know what? I'm not giving you my delegates, or I'm not getting out of the campaign. I'm not going to make a fuss in all these committees, which is press attention, unless you give us a DNC chair. That's just one point of leverage. I think there's a lot of opportunities here to use the power effectively. And instead, it's like you could either take the road that is swifter, or you could take the road with more battles that beats up your army. And as a member of that army, it's hard. And I'm really worried that Bernie keeps falling for the same mistakes over and over. And that's why I just want to reinforce to you guys that I don't know what's going to happen with this. Maybe something great comes out of it, and I hope it does. But at the end of the day, we need better leaders in Congress. We need to make sure that Pramila Jayapal has an army with her that does not side with Biden when it's convenient because they're concerned about like running for Senate or something in the long term. We need congressional members who are working people, who aren't professional operatives, who aren't, don't come from the donor class. I mean, Nancy Pelosi came up fundraising. Her father was a congressman. She worked her fundraising skills to get to win her election. She outraised her opponents the first time by massive amounts. And that's how she positioned herself into leadership. We need to have folks like Pramila Jayapal who are there saying, like, I understand from a personal perspective, like, this is what's on the line right here. And if you're not standing for working people at these moments, right? What's the point of the Democratic Party? If the Democratic Party doesn't stand for working people in the worst moments of crises, what's the point of supporting a Joe Manchin if he votes with the lobbyists on the bills that really matter? I'm not saying support him, but I'm just making the case. So, with all due respect to Bernie Sanders, who I understand is in a difficult position because he is in the Senate still. And I want you guys to keep that in mind. Like, I see a lot of folks being like, oh, he's a sellout. He's not a sellout. He's been doing this, he's been fighting for the last 40 years. Like, he's never changed his tune on any issue. If anything, he's only gotten better. So, enough with that. But don't expect Bernie to, like, outsmart the machinations of Democratic Party politics when that's not what he came up doing. What you should be doing, though, or actually, I shouldn't say, you do whatever you need to do. But what I'm trying to focus the show on doing right now is how we build a movement moving forward. We can sit here and we can complain about the DNC all day, and I have a lot of complaints, probably more than most people. But we should be thinking about how we make sure the progressives have more leverage against the Democrats in power, because there is a point where Nancy Pelosi actually has to listen to progressives, and that only works if we have more progressives in solidarity in Congress, in power. And that only happens if we elect more progressives who are absolute progressives, who don't take corporate money, who don't take oil money, who don't take gas money, who want to break up monopolies, especially right now, who stand for a living wage. And enough with this $15 minimum wage. Can we just talk about, in big cities, $30 an hour? Because in New York in particular, and I talked about this during my campaign, if it had been adjusted with inflation, it would be $33 an hour. And that does not include the cost of living, which up until now has been extraordinarily high. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few months? It might go higher, actually. We need people who are going to fight these monopolies, who are going to be going after distressed assets, who are going to be trying to privatize everything right now. Everything. You have a trillionaire. I can't believe I'm saying that. Well, we're about to face the worst unemployment in the last, 70, 80 years, possibly even worse. We have a trillionaire? Where is Congress? Where are the Democrats? Where are the populist Republicans? Seriously, where are the antitrust Republicans? That's what I want to know. Because there's going to be a point, and it's already happening, when the majority of Americans, not just those who earn under $50,000, but the majority of Americans are not going to, the small business owners, the medium-sized business owners are going to be struggling. I mean, they are already, but it's going to be a point of no return. And if the oligarchs in charge are deciding our futures, like Nancy Pelosi, we're really screwed. And so that is why I think we got to fight locally. Be hyper-focused on Congress right now. I'm really saddened that we're pushing things off to another committee. But, we have 6 months until the election. Where are you going to spend your energy? Frustrated about this committee that I'm telling you probably won't mean much. Great people, want to reinforce that, great people who will take a stand for us, but most likely it'll be put into a process. Or should we be making phone calls and donating money to candidates who have a shot of winning their districts if COVID hadn't happened and could now if we focus our energy, like Nabila Islam in Georgia, whose race is coming up in just a few weeks, and her district was won by 400 points by Republican, and she has a real shot of winning, and she's an unapologetic progressive. Or Samalis Lopez in the Bronx, who's running against multiple people right now, lowest turnout district in the entire country, poorest district in the country, and the most democratic district in the country. She came up homeless. She worked extremely hard. She's an activist, a housing activist I've known for years. That's the kind of person, because that turnout is so low, and there's so many candidates, there's a real opportunity to get her elected. But if we focus on her, there's a whole slate of Cori Bush, who has likely had COVID while she's running for Congress. She's a nurse. She's running against the machine. I mean, this is the kind of fighter that we need in Congress right now. Somebody who knows what it's like, but only if we focus our energy on these candidates. So with that, let me see. Any other super chats? I apologize, guys, because I was staring at the camera. Hide 12, thank you. You one strong, smart, savvy, confident, sexy lady. I don't know about that, but okay. I appreciate it. Very sweet. Sometimes I feel like you guys just throw things in there just to make me say them out loud. Yeah, I mean, listen, I know a lot of people want a third party. It is going to take a lot of work. We can't decide the day that Bernie loses a primary that we want a third party. That's going to take real hard work and energy. And so if you believe in this, start planning now. But I wouldn't expect result. Well, first off, it's too late in many cases because of ballot issues. But you're not going to get results by November, especially under COVID. So if you do believe that's the way, there's a case to be made there. Start organizing now. Actually, start organizing after November, because I think we need to help candidates right now that are challenging establishment members who need the support of the movement right now. They're running against well-financed machine politicians who are playing dirty games. Melanie Dorigo is running against Tom Suozzi in New York right now. Melanie has been smeared by the machine. And it's horrifying to hear what she's had to go through, because she's running against a Democrat who actually caucuses with the Republicans in Congress. He's from New York. He represents Long Island and Queens. So this is what we have to focus on. You want more AOCs? Let's start putting the energy into all the people who are running, who have different stories in AOC but have the same energy and will bring that energy into Congress. And I've seen a lot of these folks in the last few weeks when they could have sat on the sidelines, when they could have bitten their tongues, and they have gone full force against the establishment and called them out when the establishment didn't believe in Tara Reade, when the establishment didn't want to speak up against Pelosi and her whatever bill this is. That is when it matters. Are you sitting on the sidelines quiet, or are you speaking up? So if you can put your energy into these folks and their campaigns, please do. Pramila Jayapal is only as powerful as her caucuses. As Nancy Pelosi once said, everybody is just one vote. So let's make sure that all of these votes are of as many people as possible, and that there is a coalition, a solidarity coalition, so that our votes are always progressive, not just when it's convenient or suits, their fundraising needs. Okay, guys. Make sure to click subscribe. I can never say that word. Subscribe and like and alerts, and join us on Patreon. We are giving out mugs now. I got a whole 2 boxes in the corner over there. Patreon.com/The Nomi Key Show. We also have bags, which, one more. I have sciatica, guys. I don't know if you know that. Kept me up all night last night. Sciatica is the worst. These are our bags. They're fantastic. So I use arnica. I don't know if you know what arnica is, but I learned about it last year and it saves my life. But sciatica is really, really, really tough. Sometimes I'm okay. Sometimes I do yoga. I try to do it regularly, and I think I've just been sitting a lot. And not. I mean, as a New Yorker, I walk a lot. I'm not walking as much. Uh, J.G. Cello, or J. I don't know how you say your name. So you ask, would you run for public office again? That was a hard experience, but I mean, if there was a movement and there was some importance and my voice could be heard and I could organize folks and make a difference, sure. But I'm not calculating. Like, I have a lot of stuff on my plate right now, including this show, which has been super exciting. And I want to thank you guys all too, because this is a hard time for independent media. I mean, we started at the end of January and we had great growth, and I had no idea that we would be in this situation. So thank you to our producer Dorsey, who helped us build the studio, and now we have a great team who's helping us figure out how like all the platforms work, because I don't understand that stuff. So I'm just grateful to you all. I'm extremely grateful to the patrons, because they're able to keep this show afloat, and I just feel like what we're offering right now is super important, because so many folks are looking for ways that they can channel their energy. And the movement is at a turning point. I mean, in 2016, some of us knew Bernie was going to run, or felt it at least, and so we don't have that. No one leader, no hero is going to save us. It really is going to come down to solidarity in the movement. And I wish Bernie had spent a little bit more time cultivating solidarity and explaining it to folks, because the second he's out of the race, folks are really confused about where to go and directionless. And it really is going to come down to us. It's going to come down to us. So if you have time right now, if you are one of the few, and I say that because I think this is like kind of played out that everyone's got all this time. Parents are teaching their kids. Frontline workers are working extra long hours. People are sick, are caring for sick ones, and a lot of folks are out of work right now and trying to figure out their lives. But if you do have time, I would say, journal, number one. Number two, think about where you want to channel your energy. Make phone calls to folks. That's always very powerful. If you're not going out for coffee every day like I do, I'm trying to save the $5 I spent on cold brew, because that's what it costs in New York. It has nothing to do with the cold brew. It has to do with the rent. So just keep, whoop, hey there, microphone out. Yeah, the cold brew is expensive because of the rent. So, that's New York. But if you do have that time, read. There's a new book out by John Nichols, who I interviewed this week. If you haven't checked it out, it's up right now. And it talks about the last 75 years of the Democratic Party and how the establishment has crushed the movement, crushed FDR's third-party attempts, seriously. Henry Wallace's third-party attempts. There was a movement by socialists, a very serious movement as a party by socialists in the 70s, and they were crushed. I mean, that's just, a couple of situations, but I definitely recommend reading that book. So we have a lot to learn from the mistakes of history, because we tend to repeat them, huh? Okay, love you all. I'm sorry about the audio. I didn't see that until the end, so I'm hoping it's okay now. And thank you for the sciatica information. Yeah. I do think Sam Cedar should run for office. He talks about that sometimes, primarying our senator. That would be fun. But I like him on TV too. Maybe he can do both. All right. On that note, make sure to click alerts too. Thank you all. Take care. Be safe, healthy. Mwah.